Good day and welcome to episode 2 of our webinar series, Sustainable Fire Door Manufacturing. And this is managing price expectations when costs are steadily rising. So it's critical that we don't jeopardize life safety as we find ways to market challenges. There's no price too high to pay for protecting lives. So it's fair to say the fire door industry has had its fair share of exceptional challenges, and no doubt more to come. Our current webinar series is being aimed at strengthening fire door manufacturers to plan for Q3 and Q4 of this year and beyond. So this episode will provide valuable guidance on how to manage customer expectations, help them want to pay more reasonably for price of fire doors, and when all production costs are going up all around us. So today, one of our big aims is not only promoting life safety through strengthening fire door production, but we're empowering you to put your prices up, just put them up without consideration, and we will come on to that later in the episode. So again, it's critical. We don't want to jeopardize life safety. We find ways to meet the market challenges. There's no price too high to pay for protecting life. And we believe as the industry works together, we can overcome these challenges. And that's really the aim in today's episode. With the turbulence of market conditions, it's important to remember the underlying purpose of fire door production and fire door installation. So we're enhancing life safety. This is really what guides Rutland in all we do. The main thrust of today is to look at cost pressures within the industry and make a case for passing price increases onto the customer and the end user. So we'll make that easy, and sustainability of every fire door manufacturer. First and foremost is the importance of understanding the industry challenges that exist, more sort of global understanding, and how this is affecting costs. Not to detract from today's topic, but just a quick reminder and shout out to welcome door manufacturers to take up our offer of the free assessment on lean and visual management from episode 1. Big thanks to Clarity VM. The last episode was looking at inwardly at door manufacturers to strengthen the core of the door manufacturer, whilst today we're looking at more globally outward towards ways to bolster up this position of supply chain life safety door sets. So there's a chat function on the Zoom call at the bottom. Please use this. We welcome questions. We'll go on to a Q&A session at the end. So joining me today is Darren Selkus, Chairman of UV Group PLC, Chairman and CEO, and to share his insight of what's happening to supply chains across the world. Very interesting, which will help us understand, I think, what's happening to costs. So over to you, Darren. Big welcome, and please introduce the perfect storm.
Thank you very much. I'm Darren Selkus, Chairman and CEO of Union Veneers. I'm a British Army veteran, was even a 2019 parliamentary candidate, but I've got 30 years experience in the manufacture of veneers and veneer products, international trade and supply chain management. And what I'm going to talk about today is what can only be called the perfect storm. We're going to look at how 2 years of COVID and COVID restrictions caused a global supply chain collapse. We'll look at the energy crisis, Ukraine war and Russian sanctions, the resulting inflation, how it all impacts us, and recommended strategies. The supply chain collapse started with the lockdowns. The first one was in Wuhan back in January 2020, and they then spread and continued around the world, with some areas of China still in lockdown now. Every time somewhere went into lockdown, production stopped. Supply was restricted, but at the same time, demand continued. People are at home on their computers, buying on the internet. So supply stops and demand continued. 2.5 years of lockdowns like this created a huge imbalance and a supply shortage. And even now, the world has been unable to catch up. COVID and COVID restrictions caused labour shortages, which, as we're fully aware, is still a problem now. Furlough was there for about 1.5 years here, but the same thing was done around the world, and people were paid to stay at home. And rather than being laid off, finding new jobs, millions of people around the world were taken out of the workforce. Add to that, people were told to work from home, and this was regardless of whether they were productive or could do it or not. Working from home changed all expectations and is now common practice. It's estimated that approximately 2/3 of the civil service and 25% of the private sector are still working from home. There's a lot of debate on whether productivity of working from home is a good thing or not. And if we just look at the evidence of the passport office, DVLA and driving license, the Home Office and visa processing, there's all massive delays by different government departments. So, if those delays are there, this puts serious questions on how productive working from home is. And if it's not productive, then that's the equivalent of taking people out of the workforce. Now, there may be circumstances where it does work, but I can tell you in our business and company, it doesn't, and it certainly doesn't appear to work in the public sector. During COVID, we also suffered a huge amount of sickness absences, and with some people also suffering from long COVID, while other members of the labour supply were shielding. We also had isolation, quarantine, a lot of people contacted by track and trace. If you had any symptoms, you had to isolate. This took a huge amount of people out of the labour supply and still does. And we're still suffering from it. And one thing you might not know is 1.5 million people over the age of 50 took early retirement as a result of the pandemic. And now, after furlough's finished and life is back to normal, rehiring and retraining is a huge issue. Just look at the airline industry today, where flights are cancelled, airports understaffed and unable to handle demand. These labour issues had a calamitous knock-on effect on global trade and global freight. There's been a lack of drivers to collect containers from the port, a lack of port workers to handle them. And this lack of labour and lack of drivers and port workers has led to huge port congestion that still continues today. Vessels are stacked outside of ports for weeks and months waiting to dock and to be unloaded. In the US, these labour issues have also caused knock-on effects on rail freight, and where most containers are moved by rail rather than container. And that's added weeks and weeks to delivery times. As everything's turning slower, there's a shortage of empty containers to load, and they're in the wrong places. Vessel sailing times have doubled. With all these ships waiting outside of ports, the actual sailing times of the vessels is much longer, and they're delayed waiting to go into ports. The impact of this is container shipping capacity is dramatically reduced. If there's the same number of vessels and containers, but everything takes twice as long to get anywhere or be unloaded, it's the equivalent of a 50% reduction in global shipping capacity, which simply means there's not enough availability. What does this mean for shipping times? Well, it used to take a few days or weeks to load a container and get a vessel to sail that realistically now takes 1 to 3 months. And on some routes, such as Africa to China, or Africa to the US, or China to the US, there's almost no availability whatsoever. There is reasonable availability to the UK now, but there are times when it isn't available. For 18 months, our company has not been able to ship from certain areas that we produce to our customers around the world, and we've had to ship containers via Europe and then reload in Europe to ship to North America or South America. The lead times on that have just been astronomical by the time our customers get their goods. These longer sailings and the unloading delays and the shortage of inland freight and the problems of inland freight has increased the transit times a further month. So shipping time, which used to be from sort of booking a container to it arriving of about 6 weeks, is now unbelievably 3 months to 5 months, and sometimes even longer. And remember, this is just the shipping time. It doesn't even include the time it takes to produce the goods. So it just gives you an idea of how long lead times now are if you're having to ship around the world.
That's very good, Darren, to get that global overview. And just sorry to interrupt, but did you had an experience, just a container from USA to Liverpool, was it?
Is this the one where we got stuck with the extra charges?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and there was all sorts of extra paperwork and.
Well, okay. Well, I mean that actual situation. It was actually 3 containers, and I think they were coming from North America to the UK. And
just across the pond.
Yeah, and those containers arrived, and we'd received no notification of that in advance. And those containers arrived, and the shipping line, which was Ocean Network Express, one line shipping, contacted us. I remember very clearly. It was a Wednesday. Contacted us and said, you've got 3 containers that have arrived into port. We've booked delivery of them to you for Friday. We said, yeah, no problem. We're open. We'll take those containers as soon as possible. Those they then said to us, hold on, you've got an outstanding invoice of £500 that you need to pay. We said, okay, no problem. They sent us over those invoices. We dropped everything. We got it paid in about half an hour, and thought everything was good and those containers would be delivered on the Friday. About 4 o'clock, they sent us another email saying, there's another £122 outstanding. And we said, yeah, but we haven't got an invoice for that. Would you like to send us a copy and we'll pay it straight away? We didn't get a copy of that invoice. And the next morning, that was Thursday morning when we came in, we received notification from One Line Shipping that that delivery of those 3 containers had been cancelled because we had £122 outstanding, and they told us that sent us an invoice for just over £1,000 for demurrage charges, port storage charges, and cancellation of the delivery for the trucks that they said they allegedly had booked. So, so for £122 for an invoice that we didn't have, they then sent us a bill literally the next morning for £1,000. So we went crazy, but that got absolutely nowhere with them, and had no choice but to send them the £1,000 and the £122 which we didn't have an invoice for, and they rebooked the delivery of those containers for the following Tuesday. Anyway, we told them that we don't accept these extra charges, but paid them, got the containers on the Tuesday, and then started contacting them and sending letters demanding our money back. Over the next few weeks, we discussed this, and they absolutely refused to give us any refund, and said the case was closed. At that point, I mean, this has been happening to us almost daily for months. So we had enough. Took them to the small claims court, and they were served with a summons. The day they received the summons, they contacted us, said, we'll immediately pay you back. Please cancel the court case. And I said, yeah, no problem. As soon as you give us you send us the payment, we'll cancel the court case. oh, the payment will take us about 2 weeks to make. I said, well, hold on. When you demand, £500 from us or £122 from us, you don't give us
immediate payment.
Yeah, you don't give us 2 weeks to put it through normal accounting procedure. We have to drop everything and send a quick transfer. Otherwise, you cancel our containers and give us extra charges. So anyway, we didn't cancel the court case, but we did receive the money about 10 days later, and then we did cancel it. But here's the best thing. As soon as that happened, One Line Shipping then blacklisted the UV Group PLC and all our subsidiaries, Union Veneers, Pleasant Hill Veneer Corporation, Edgeband USA, and the list continues. So about 2 weeks later, when we went to book one of our forwarders went to book another container on One Line Shipping, we were blacklisted and they wouldn't do it. So just gives you an idea of the craziness that's going on in shipping at the moment.
Yeah, and it's unprecedented. You've never had anything like this. For how many years have you been in shipping?
Well, I've been doing this. I've been doing international trade for 30 years and never seen anything like this before. I mean, if I carry on and tell you about the freight cost increases, sea freight has gone up between double and 10 times pre-COVID levels. And road freight, as we all know, has gone up with the cost of fuel 30 to 40%, and all the pressure on sea freight and the urgency and late deliveries means that air freight has gone through the roof. So air freight now is about 3 times what it used to be. I mean, admittedly, there's less flights, but even as more flights are now coming on stream and demand returns, there's the rates are still triple what they used to be. Please don't tell me that anyone's cost has gone up by 5 or 10 times, that they have to charge that to cover their costs. I mean, the shipping lines. I mean, you've got me on a topic now which I feel particularly strongly about. The shipping lines in 2021 made $100 billion. This is the 7 major container shipping lines that control 90% of global freight. They made $100 billion. That's in 1 year. That's the same as they made in the previous 7 years added together. And in 2022, they made that 100 billion in the first 6 months of this year. So it's more or less doubled again. So this is absolute oligopoly profiteering, and not cost based. And I'll come to more of that later when I talk about the inflation.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry to knock you off your stride there. It's good.
The consequence of all of this, Neil and everyone else out there, is that everything is late. Everything's in the wrong place, and it's very difficult to build stocks. We can all understand how labour shortages can limit production in factories and cause delays, but the impact of these labour shortages on shipping and the domino effect it's had on the global supply chain just isn't seen. It's not recognised and not talked about.
No. Well, that's why we're here today, just to get an understanding of it. I think it helps. It helps to get the background.
Okay, just stop me, Neil. Anything else I'm going on to stop me? And I was now going to head on to more of the perfect storm and how it all fits into the mess we're in now, and that's the energy crisis, Ukraine war, and Russian sanctions. And with the energy crisis, it starts because of the net zero carbon emission policy. And while I fully understand, we have to cut emissions, there's a huge impact with doing so before you have other energy on stream, and it's created an energy supply. And the net zero is a disincentive to develop new fossil fuel supplies. Why would you develop costly long-term fossil fuel mining if you're telling people it's a product that they won't be able to use or going to be heavily taxed for? Governments around the world have stopped fossil fuel permits and preventing future development. There's limits in North Sea oil. Less permits are being issued, and in the UK, fracking has never been allowed, which would generate those extra fuels that we wish we had today. And all of this is at the same time that there's an insufficient supply of renewable energy to replace them. And add to all of that the green levy of 25% that's added to all energy prices today. And there's a lack of fossil fuels, an extra 25% tax, a lack of development of future fossil fuel energy, and there's a shortage and prices have rocketed. And those prices basically have rocketed in line with our net zero commitments. And that's before we even look at the impact of the Ukraine war and Russian oil and gas. I mean, we all know that Russia is one of the world's major global suppliers, especially gas. The EU has a massive dependence on Russian energy, especially gas. With the Ukraine war and what's going on, there's a huge uncertainty over the future supply, and that was another reason that energy prices rocketed. And as the world and especially Europe try to replace that Russian supply with supply from other sources, the pressure on those mounts, and when demand outweighs supply, you get more increase in costs, and energy continues to rocket. I mean, and I'll come on to this later again, talking about the profiteering. But actually, the oil price today is 10% less than it was a month ago. But you'd never know that if you look at the price at the petrol pumps. So there's definitely some sort of profiteering going on at the same time as real cost increases. The shortage of the risk of Russian gas, being turned off, and Germany and other countries in Europe trying to limit their usage of it, means there's going to be production shortages and constraints put on in Europe. So, if a factory is not allowed to work a certain number of hours a day, or was told to conserve their energy, then it's going to lead to more supply and shortages and problems. This is at the same time as energy and oil costs have literally doubled in 2022. The whole situation is a big mess, and this doesn't even, we're not even talking yet about the other things that have been affected by the Ukraine war and the Russian sanctions. It's not only oil and energy. There's loads of other products impacted. And these products, also include our timber products that we all use. Both the Ukraine and Russia are huge exporters of timber products, and this includes plywood. Oak veneer, for example, is a massive quantity comes out of Ukraine, and what's happened there is going to have a serious impact on availability going forward. But even if you're not using the timber products coming out of Russia and Ukraine, if those are taken out of the equation, it puts extra pressure on the products that you may be using from somewhere else in the world. So there's a shortage of materials, and when there's a shortage, once again, when demand is greater than supply, you get price increases.
That's very important. We're actually talking to a very global door manufacturing market here. So we've got steel door manufacturers on the call, Darren, and composite door manufacturers and timber door manufacturers. So we look at it very globally, and it is impacting even like cost of adhesives and plastics and so on from Europe, with factory costs. So although we're kind of looking at it from a timber view, it's very global, the impact.
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect storm of labour, freight, energy, and war. And this has a huge impact on UK business. We have production shortages and delays, components arriving late or not available, production capacity is limited, and huge cost increases. And these all add up and have resulted in inflation, which we know is a huge problem. It was announced today that inflation had just reached 9.1% in the UK, and the Bank of England are forecasting this to increase to 11% in October. So the problem's not going away, and then add in other factors like the pound has recently weakened, and that causes more inflation as the cost of our imports and components goes up further. And as we are absolutely full aware at the moment with the strikes going on in the country and the risk of a general strike coming later, we have wage push inflation. And if inflation's running at about 10%, if workers are not paid up to another 10%, then their standard of living is going to be reduced. So we have to expect wage inflation of anything up to 10%. I mean, the government are trying to keep it down, to 3% or 5%, but I don't know if they can. People won't be able to afford to live. They won't be able to afford to drive to work. So there's going to be tremendous wage inflation. I mean, if you think we've got it bad here, let me just tell you about our US plants. And this goes back more than a year now. So we had wage inflation literally immediately following the return from COVID of 10% in the US. And with unskilled workers, that jump was nearer 50%. So the wage inflation over probably the last year for our unskilled labor in the US was a 50% increase. So that's a massive number, and it's quite simple. If you don't pay those wages, you don't get the people, and you can't produce. So the wood industry, which typically is not the best of payers, production has collapsed, and veneer production today in the States is running at about half the level that it was pre-COVID. As well as wage push inflation, we've got, as I've mentioned before, profit push inflation, by the oligopolies, and the energy will more or less double this year for oil and gas, which is a massive part of every economy, and shipping, which is increased from double to up to 10 times. Those sorts of increases are not real cost increases. That's simply profiteering by oligopolies that can control a market. And then we've got material cost inflation of key raw materials. So if inflation is running at about 10%, if you've got a key material, then those products increase at a higher rate. And our timber, our industry's products are perfect examples. Timber, the core materials used indoors, the decorative surfaces, and it doesn't matter whether it's veneer, melamines, laminates, all of those have increased at huge rates. The glues to put the doors together and used in the core have rocketed because they're all linked to oil, as are lacquers and chemicals. All that stuff is the prices and the costs. The inflation is incredible. So if you look, I guess costs have increased in our industry over the last couple of years from something like 30% to 100%, depending on what the products are. I mean, that level of inflation is just something that I've never seen in the 30 years that I've been doing this job, but unbelievable. Over the last 40 years, inflation has been kept in check by global trade. As costs have increased, the global markets enable you to outsource and keep costs down. If there was a shortage of labor, global trade made it possible to outsource your production to somewhere where that labor was available. But as I've mentioned already, due to the shipping costs, global trade has failed, and hasn't been the solution this time, because of those extra costs.
Yeah, the flexibility's gone.
Yeah, and the availability. So that's the shortage of being able to outsource has not only pushed up the costs of goods, but it's put further strain on domestic labour as we try to produce those products here, without enough labour being available, and that's going to just push labour inflation further and just fuel inflation. But despite everything I've said, it's not all doom and gloom. The market adapts, and as prices rise, which they have done, alternative supplies come on stream, and that's definitely the case that's happening in our business. And over the next probably 3 or 4 months, we will be fully stocked everywhere around the world and have products to sell. Unfortunately, it's not at the old costs, but at the new cost, it's opened up different supply lines and availability for us. Entrepreneurs thrive in this environment. There is plenty of opportunity out there. Developing new products and to fill those gaps. The world doesn't end when there's a crisis; it just changes. So that flexibility is something to bear in mind and important. So how does this all impact us, and what are possible recommended strategies for you? Bear in mind that inflation and these cost increases are going to continue through 2022 and 2023. In all your calculations, take account of what the general inflation rate is. We know that's about 10%. That's unlikely to change for the next year and a half at least. Look at specific products and what the future costs of those are going to be and what the changes might be. Maintain regular communication with your suppliers. They know what the availability issues and the problems that are going on, and they will talk to you and give you advice on what future pricing will be for all the components going into your doors. Look at alternative materials to save costs and to ensure availability. I mean, I said to you, we've done a lot here to make sure that we have product available on the floor, so our customers don't run out. And some of the things that we've done is interchange the production of oak veneer with the US and with Europe and areas in Europe where we haven't sourced or produced before to increase our general availability. We also produce reconstituted veneers, and we do an oak one which looks almost identical to natural oak veneer, and there's a good take up on that, which is taking the pressure off some of the natural oak shortages. Multi-source. Don't have just one supplier, you'll get in trouble. You must multi-source. You must have a range of suppliers for the products that you use. Allow for delays and extended lead times. It's going to happen. Whatever you think a lead time will be, things are going to happen and it's going to be longer. There's going to be volatility. Allow for it. The plan in advance. The longer you can plan ahead, the better chance you have to deal with those changes that are going to happen. But build those concreases into your quotations and allow for what's going to happen over the next year and a half. I mean, after a year and a half, I can't tell you what's going to happen to the world, but there's definitely nothing changing at the moment. So in conclusion, what happened with COVID and COVID policy had an unintentional domino effect on labour, shipping, and the collapse of global trade. Add to that the energy crisis and war in Ukraine, and it's created a perfect storm. Inflation is out of control, supply chain disruption continues, and things are going to stay a mess for quite a while. But don't forget, regardless, there's plenty of opportunity out there. Just need to plan ahead and be prepared.
Thank you, Darren. No, it's fantastic. Thanks for sharing those insights with the industry and strategies too. As one question has come through, what do you think will happen to costs and lead times through the rest of 2022 and 2023?
It's a great question, and I wish I have the perfect answer, but I can give you my opinion. And the first one is, we know that inflation is running at about 10%, and it's not going to deviate much from that over the next year and a half. So build that into your forecasts and what your costs are going to be. Energy, glue, chemicals, which all come from the oil price and all related to oil, those prices appear that they're going to continue to rise. So a chunk of your cost is going to rise at a lot more than 10%. I don't know what percentage of your total cost is related to those products, but those could continue increasing at nearer to 30%. Wood products, due to the shortages that are going on and the continued demand, we probably had an increase, depending on the exact wood product, of 30 to 100% over the last year. I can't see how those won't continue to increase at least 20% over the next year and a half. So budgeting at least 20% increase going forward, I don't think is unreasonable.
Yeah, no, it's helpful. I know it's impossible to see ahead that far, but I think over the last few months, we're getting a feel of how it's going to be, aren't we? There's another question, Darren. One thing that intrigues this, or behind this question, was something that was said about the timber industry traditionally relying on minimum wage globally, and big sheds like Amazon taking sort of bench workers. It is something that's hitting the UK. It does concern me, and realize this puts added pressure on margins, but sort of setting aside the oligarchs with the
we're the timber trade. In the timber trade, we're our own worst enemy. They're due to probably oversupply for a long time now. There's massive pressure on manufacturers to keep costs down and stay in business.
Yeah.
So if you have that cost pressure, you limit wages. So that's so the competition in the industry has turned us into the worst payers in the market. I mean, this is especially the case in the USA, where not only do all timber factories not pay well, but they're damn awful places to work. Behind hot dryers and dangerous slicing machines and getting splinters in your hands, and we've paid rubbish wages. So as soon as there was a labour shortage, we've lost the workforce. And if you only marginally put up wages as this all happened, you lost staff. And so I mean, just put some numbers behind it. Just coming out of COVID, the unskilled wage rate in the USA was about $12 an hour. Now, if we don't pay $16 an hour, you get nobody. And if you don't pay $18 to $20 an hour, you can't get the number of people that you want. So most factories haven't been able to increase from the 12. Most have increased from the 12 to the 16, 17, and to keep going, but they've lost half their workforces. But they haven't. Most haven't increased to the $18, $20 needed to maintain full 2-3 shift production. So
what's that looking like on a yearly annual wage for a US like qualified carpenter?
I mean it is very high. Almost the basic wage is about $35,000 a year at the moment. It's about £30,000. So it's higher than here. And if you pay a wage, so you can fully man a factory with 150 people, that's probably going to be nearer, $45,000 for unskilled or relatively unskilled labour. So it just gives you an idea of how expensive it is and how big that change has been. Our industry hasn't reacted quick enough. I mean, fortunately, we just did it, and we just increased our wages immediately and did these huge jumps, and over a year period increased 2 or 3 times by 30%. So we're almost paying double what we were a year and a quarter ago. and we're fully staffed, and we have plenty of capacity. But the industry as a whole hasn't, and that's why we've got one of the reasons we've got the shortages we do now.
Yeah. Now the industry is not going to like me for this, but I have to say what I need to say as a trusted advisor, and I'm looking at fire door manufacturers. I'd love to see them like how we'd regard healthcare facilities in the care of life and well-being, and door manufacturers, bench workers, and door installers, carpenters fitting fire doors perfectly with all the right gaps. You're talking fractions of millimeters. I'm seeing it like on the level of a neurosurgeon. You get someone doing brain surgery, working on someone's brain or on someone's spine, and they're fractions of millimeters, and they're saving one life or improving one life. A door installer installing a fire door perfectly is saving many lives. You think of one fire door as a life-saving device, and the number of hundreds of people in some buildings that are living above that fire door. If they're protecting someone from smoke inhalation, I think it's something we should be aiming at as an industry. That these skilled workers are actually getting valued. But I know it's going to be something hard to put in place. I just think it's an aim to have anyway, to be promoting life safety. I don't think there's any more questions coming through, Darren. So I really appreciate what you've shared with us there. And just to summarize, in the face of the universal costs, it's essential, I think, that door manufacturers put their prices up to the end customers. Critical life-saving device, as we've said. Fire doors aren't to be regarded as commodities, in our opinion. So just some takeaway points. Very sympathetic with business and industry, and that's the whole reason for this webinar series. But the importance, just some key takeaways. Number one, importance of training sales teams so they understand supply chain challenges. This video will be available on our events page of our website. But to understand supply chain challenges, so they're able and empowered to explain to their customers day to day, just to easily justify price increases, and also find solutions for customers when supply interruption does occur, as Darren's been saying. The second takeaway of equal importance is looking ahead. As we've been saying, anticipate supply chain issues, like what UV Group have been doing with changing their oak veneer to a kind of a hybrid product development, and focusing on sourcing a product to satisfy customer requirements. So, as many did in COVID, it's maybe relevant to shift staff, get the right staff in the right seats in the current challenges. Some companies we know actually moved salespeople into the procurement department, not permanently, but and not reducing the prospecting. But what you find with salespeople is they're so hungry for the sales and keeping the customers happy, that they've actually got a lot of more out the box thinking. And then the value of educating customers in advance on supply chain availability and alternatives that may exist, just educating the customers. So that brings us to a close, and just to thank you for watching, and to invite you to join our next episode, which is on Wednesday, 13th of July, where we continue this series, and we'll be joined by David Wheeler and Chris Todd from Drummond Laurie accountants, controlling cash flow challenges and optimizing financial opportunities. They've got some really exciting things to share with us. So thanks again, Darren, and we look forward to working towards a stronger fire door manufacturing base in the UK. Thank you.